Some children fall onto a red carpet the moment they're born into this world, but carrying a famous surname is entirely different from deserving it. Today we'll look at 5 different stories. Some lost their way right from the start with a massive box office disaster. Others ruined their own lives through a major scandal they lived through. They all shared one thing in common. Growing up in the shadow of a famous parent made them just as well known for the opportunities they had as for what was expected of them. Jaden Smith, How the Father-Son Project Backfired. Jaden Smith's acting journey began in 2006 with a drama film he made together with his father, Will Smith. The film's story was about a father and son struggling with homelessness. Using the real-life father-son duo was actually a pretty smart choice for adding credibility to the story. Neither critics nor audiences were bothered by the film. The young actor even won a few awards for his performance in it. The family's production company immediately turned this early success into brand building. First, he starred in a science fiction film, a fast-paced but forgettable project. After that came the remake of an old classic martial arts film, and it grossed hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide. At the time, that number looked like a major win for the young actor, but time showed that this success stemmed from the marketing power the original franchise still carried, and the international fame of his co-star. The real turning point came in 2013. A science fiction film made with a well-known director had been specifically built to turn him into a leading man. But the result was that a massive budget production turned into a scene of a father giving his son private acting lessons. The script rendered the father character powerless for most of the film, so the young actor had to carry the entire emotional weight alone. Critics did not like the performance. Shooting such long scenes is already difficult for an inexperienced actor, and the fact that he had no formal training made that difficulty even more obvious. Against its budget of $130 million, the film grossed only $27 million domestically. Because of being named the worst-performing film of the year, both father and son were remembered together for the failure. The father later admitted that this failure was the biggest and most painful of his career, and that he regretted dragging his son into such a public lynching. They were so worn down by it that it was reported the 15-year-old young actor even considered legally separating from his family. Around the same time, the family's name came up in another controversy. It came out that the curriculum of the private school they had founded was based on a teaching method developed by the founder of a religious movement. Former staff said photographs of the movement's founder hung on the school's walls, and that teachers were sent to special training centers. The school closed almost the same year as the film disaster, which led people to question whether the young actor's strange behavior at the time actually stemmed from growing up in a closed community rather than from creativity. After being rejected by film, he turned to music and fashion. His debut album earned a degree of critical respect and helped him build an identity independent of his father. Still, some critics continued to view his work as empty. In late 2025, when no one was expecting it, he was appointed men's creative director of one of the world's most prestigious luxury fashion houses. The fashion world hadn't seen this coming. A seat that designers with years of training had dreamed of had been handed to someone with essentially no technical experience. His debut collection proved those fears right. A pair of red furry boots in particular became a target of mockery on social media. Critics compared the collection to an amateur student project being sold purely on the strength of his name. Despite everything and all the criticism, he still holds that seat today. Chet Hanks. Every door was open, yet the opportunities went to waste. Tom Hanks's son became, over 15 years, perhaps the prime example of how to squander what might be the most valuable surname in Hollywood. He began acting in 2007 with a youth film that was critically demolished. It was a hopeless start. After that, he took a small role in an archaeology adventure film, played the pizza delivery boy in a romantic comedy directed by his father, and appeared as a side character in a superhero reboot. During this period, he was pouring most of his energy into a rap career, but his music wasn't well received, and at the same time, his substance addiction was increasingly spiraling out of control. Years later, in interviews, he admitted that during that period he was both using and selling cocaine. That same year, he was wanted by police in England for trashing a hotel room. His family sent him to a wilderness therapy program, one of those programs where troubled teens are shipped off into the woods to be straightened out. He described the experience as both traumatic and necessary, saying that everyone saw him as a kid who'd gotten famous without earning it, so he felt he had to work twice as hard to be taken seriously. His acting improved somewhat once he moved into television. In one series, he played a character close to his own real struggles with addiction, and critics said he captured genuine desperation in the role. Then in another series, he played a white rapper caught up in the power dynamics of the hip-hop world, and after that, in a legal drama series, he played a character testifying against a crime organization. These weren't lead roles, but they at least showed he could be a working, dependable television actor. In March 2025, in a sports drama series, he played a basketball player who was talented on the court but troubled off it, secretly chasing a rap career, a character that was almost a mirror of his own real life. Critics found the performance sincere and natural, with some even calling him the show's secret weapon. For nearly the first time in almost 2 decades, he was receiving genuine critical acclaim, but even that success remained overshadowed by past controversies. A slogan he put out in early 2021, along with an accompanying clothing line, sparked major backlash. His imitation of a Jamaican accent in the music video led to accusations of cultural appropriation. The font he used bore an uncomfortably close resemblance to fonts associated with white nationalist groups. He himself said it wasn't a racist reference and that he condemned racial prejudice, but some far-right figures co-opted the slogan for their own purposes. This was just the latest link in a years-long chain of criticism over cultural appropriation. He had faced accusations of treating black culture like a costume he could put on and take off whenever it suited a privileged white kid. During this same period, following a problem with an ex-girlfriend, a publicly reported incident occurred in which his former partner said she had been physically and verbally abused and requested court protection, obtaining a restraining order. He, for his part, denied the allegations and filed a countersuit. While his siblings carried on their lives professionally, he turned his name into a fixture of tabloid headlines. Ishana Night Shyamalan. Mentorship or shortcut? The daughter of a director famous for his twist-ending films began her career on the psychological thriller series her father produced for Apple TV+. At just 19, she started directing episodes of the series. Her father described this as a kind of lifelong mentorship. Over the course of the series, she directed 6 episodes and wrote 10, 2 of which were season finales. This experience essentially functioned as her film school. By the time she graduated from university in 2021, she already had a professional portfolio built on a major streaming platform, something most of her peers didn't have. Some critics described this as a kind of erosion of meritocracy, a young director gaining access to high-budget production environments not through her own efforts, but through her relationship to someone already experienced. In addition to the series, she worked as a second unit director on 2 of her father's films, which gave her the chance to learn techniques for building tension and atmosphere. Getting this level of early access to major studio productions in her early 20s was extraordinarily rare. This reinforced the perception that her directorial debut wasn't a climb but a teleportation straight into the director's chair. At 23, she made her directorial debut with a $30 million horror film she co-wrote with her father. The film was adapted from a novel about a group of people trapped in an Irish forest while being watched by mysterious creatures. The project was equipped with all the support and resources her father could provide, but when it hit theaters, the reception wasn't just mixed, it was harsh. Critical scores were far from high or well regarded. Many said the film was vague and lacked the clever twist that made her father's films distinctive. The second half of the film drew especially sharp criticism. The mystery being resolved through a sudden flood of dialogue killed the interest the audience had invested in the characters. The complexity the characters had in the novel was flattened in the adaptation, and much of the emotional depth was lost. Still, critics acknowledged that she had genuine technical skill as a director. Working with her cinematographer, she used the Irish landscape effectively to build an atmospheric sense of dread. Mirror shots and a dark color palette produced a distinct visual signature, even if the story wasn't yet strong enough to match it. The sound design also earned praise, building real tension in the first act, though that tension dissipated once the creatures appeared on screen due to the shallowness of the CGI and the scene's lack of patience. The film arrived at the peak of the Nepo baby debate. Many people compared her situation to that of talented young directors who graduate from film school and go years without ever getting a chance. She herself acknowledged this privilege, framing it as a legacy an immigrant family builds across generations, and also argued that the Nepo baby label is used to invalidate young women more harshly than men. Some have compared her to other directors' children who managed to step out of their famous father's shadows and build their own identities, but critics feel she hasn't yet distanced herself enough from her father's aesthetic and remains stuck in an imitative phase. Lily-Rose Depp, a safe harbor in fashion, turbulent waters in film. Johnny Depp's daughter began her acting career in 2014 with a small role in a horror comedy directed by a friend of her father's, an obvious favor. After that, she took the lead in the sequel to that same film. This early period was when questions first began about whether her roles were genuinely earned. At the same time, she was also building a modeling career, which over time became a far more stable footing than acting. At 16, she was chosen as global ambassador for a major French luxury fashion house, an appointment personally overseen by the brand's legendary creative director. This was a significant deal, and given that her mother had previously promoted a perfume for the same brand, it was a continuation of the relationship between the family and the brand. Working across eyewear, cosmetics, perfume, and watches, she became the youngest face in the brand's history. To many, this looked like a textbook Nepo baby move, but from a marketing standpoint, it wasn't an unreasonable offer since it targeted a new generation. The stability her modeling career maintained over the following decade gave her a safety net that kept her visible even when her film projects were delayed or poorly received. In 2016, she moved into French-language cinema, playing dancer Isadora Duncan in a film that earned her a nomination at a prestigious French awards ceremony. For a while, it seemed she might be able to build a serious acting identity in European cinema, independent of the Nepo baby debate in America. But in 2022, a magazine cover story sparked a viral Nepo baby controversy, and she became one of the most frequently cited examples in it. Many argued that family connections were replacing talent in Hollywood, eroding a merit-based system. In an interview with a magazine, she compared her situation to a child whose parents are doctors, saying that when that child also becomes a doctor, no one says they only made it because of their parents. This comparison only intensified the backlash. It was seen as lacking in self-awareness and shaped how the media viewed her from that point on. Unlike other celebrity children who spoke candidly during the same period, she came across as defensive and ungrateful. In June 2023, an HBO series in which she had the lead role turned into a disaster for her. The series had been marketed as a boundary-pushing drama about the music industry, but it became the network's worst-reviewed production to date. Even when its first episode screened at a prestigious film festival, they received no positive reception. It was torn apart for excessive sexuality, nudity, drug use, and its depiction of toxic masculinity. Some commentators went so far as to call it outright torture porn. Industry press highlighted the show's weak plotting and lack of clarity about what it was trying to say. Her starring role only reinforced the criticism that she couldn't carry a major project on her own. Max Landis, from a bright beginning to a dark ending. The son of famed director John Landis reached the peak of his career in 2012 with a found-footage-style superhero drama. The film was not a failure either critically or commercially. Against a $15 million budget, it grossed $127 million. Critics praised its clever script, which managed to rise above the cliches of the found-footage format that was everywhere at the time. When the film opened over Super Bowl weekend, it earned far more than expected and turned the young writer into a leading voice of a new generation raised on cinema. He saw himself as a fast writer, claiming to have written nearly 100 screenplays entirely on his own, and said this speed gave him a competitive edge. On the strength of that, he sold several major projects in quick succession. But as his filmography grew, the quality didn't rise with it. If anything, it declined. The success of his first film remained a peak, while his later projects drew increasingly negative reviews rather than positive ones, eventually resulting in disappointing box office numbers as well. He blamed his failures on studio interference, claiming his original scripts had been distorted during production. In response, he began refusing to sell scripts to projects without a predetermined cast and director attached, aiming to prevent studio executives from meddling with his work. This pattern, pinning failure on the system while insisting his own vision was brilliant, became a recurring theme, with his personal image increasingly overshadowing his actual creative output. In 2017, an action film he wrote for a streaming platform, starring Will Smith, was panned by critics and became a byword for just how bad a big-budget streaming production could be. This failure reinforced the idea that the success of his first film had been a fluke rather than a sign of lasting talent. But the real collapse came in June 2019. An investigative news outlet published a report describing a pattern of abuse spanning over a decade in which 8 women came forward with allegations of emotional and sexual abuse. The testimonies were extremely detailed and disturbing, describing him as a serial abuser who was manipulative and both physically and psychologically abusive. A former girlfriend recounted that after a consensual encounter, he grew furious over a playful gesture, grabbed her by the throat, and threatened to kill her. The same woman said he had shown her a long list of women he'd been with, complete with a note ranking each one by ethnicity and enjoyment level, revealing that he viewed his partners not as real people but as experiences he collected for his own ego. The allegations extended into professional settings as well. The allegations from a woman who worked with him on a film set were horrifying. She claimed he forced her onto a bed and made inappropriate sexual jokes. The report also referenced a previously dropped sexual assault complaint. Witness statements, however, indicated that the accuser's roommate had found him on top of her while she was drunk and disoriented. Taken together, these accounts reinforce the impression that he used his money and status to draw women into a glamorous circle before subjecting them to manipulation and abuse. Following the report, projects and deals were canceled one after another. A name once considered one of cinema's brightest new talents can no longer work in mainstream Hollywood today. Every door his father's name had opened for him closed permanently,